Secondly, and I've always said that it takes two things to restore fiscal responsibility and get into the black again in governmental spending. And that's cuts in spending. And then secondly, cuts in taxation. And I can say that because we don't live in a state that we don't tax enough. We don't live in a country that we don't tax enough. I remember standing before a UAW group back in 1988. Must be getting older, I remember further back. But I had Dukakis picture right behind me. And I was the only Republican in the room, I can tell you that. At least that would allow them to be known. And I said, let's just find out where we come down together, where we agree. Because I know I'm in a hostile environment here. And I said, how many of you in the room feel that government doesn't spend enough? Not one hand went up until finally one guy just belligerently stuck his hand up. I said, well, I'd like to talk to you afterwards. You've got a different perspective than all the rest of us, but let's leave it that way. I said, how many of you think that government doesn't tax enough? Again, nobody until this one guy puts his hand up like that. Well, I knew he wasn't going to vote for me. And I said, you know, all of us here, whether Republican, Democrat, UAW, or non-union, we believe the government spends too much, taxes too much. So did Kennedy. So did Reagan. And then since then, so did Clinton, so did George W. Bush. And all of them understood that if you give tax cuts, it increases revenue. It increases revenue not only to us, the taxpayer, but then we spend it, we invest it, we do entrepreneurial things with it, the economy grows. Government gets more tax dollars. That's where you gotta also restrain the spending. You can't just talk tax cuts. And that's where George W. Bush lost it. He did great on his tax cuts that we're gonna lose on January 1 of this next year. And we're all going to get a tax increase. Obama says he's not going to increase taxes. Oh, yes, he is. Because he's going to let that expire. And we're all going to get hit. And if you're taking dividends, and you're counting on your dividends to buy your next vehicle or to address some of your retirement needs, you're going to get hit. So we need tax cuts in the process. Bush didn't do that. He spent too much, and he allowed government to grow too much. That's why I voted against his TARP, the bailout. It was the right thing to do. We're spending too much. So, again, I agree with what you're saying there, and I'm one. And I can author legislation, and I will, or amendments that will reduce the spending. And the easiest way is not to get mixed up in the weeds with all of the little items, but to say to the department heads, you don't have a choice. You got to do it. Across your budget, a cut. You do that, we bow down to you and say you're blessed. You did a great job. And the taxpayer is served by that. If we get into the fights, the little things, we'll never get it done. That's why I do across the board cuts.